Thank you, Bo. Saurabh. I always hate to give Bo too much credit, but this is really a great story. IPP making invoice processing more efficient for the government, and RPA making it easier for vendors and agencies to adopt IPP. So the two of them are really working well together. So this is our next section, vendor presentations. And I'm pleased to introduce Automation Anywhere. We have John Brideweeser with, he's sales engineer, and Keith Nelson, Senior Director, Public Sector. Welcome, gentlemen. Okay, that's fine.
Thanks for bearing with us. My name is Keith Nelson. It's a great pleasure to be here today. I've been sitting in the chairs of many of you in the past. I was most recently at the Department of Transportation. I've been working at Housing and Urban Development and the Department of Labor before, and I've been a management consultant with many of your agencies and others. And I can appreciate the way this technology can really improve your operations in a variety of ways. I'm thinking back to a job I had at DOT was assisting the Secretary on financial matters. And DOT is a grants shop. I think it's the #2 largest grant agency in the government. And it's got about 200 grants programs, about $60 billion, a lot of them through the states, a lot of them direct. And the Secretary never liked getting surprised when she went on travel and showing up and talking to a governor or a mayor or some public local official who said, "Madam Secretary, thank you so much for this grant for our highways or our metro system." And they knew more about it than she did. She did not like that very much. Even grant applications, we really are disappointed. I understand, but we disappointed we didn't win that particular grant competition. And so she asked me to say, prepare me better. As I go to one of these different locations, I want to know all the grants we've recently awarded. I want to know what grants they've applied for, and so I can have sufficient information to have a reasonable dialogue with these people. We found out, very similar, I heard it this morning again, had to do it through a data call. So the senior finance person asked the modal finance people, tell me what's going on in your grants, and the modal finance people talk to their grant administrators, tell me what's going on in your grant programs. And inevitably, it was a lot of pain, and pain rolls downhill. So I was thinking this would have been a great thing for a bot to go in, just like those manual people were doing, combing through the grant information for each of their programs, sort it by location, and that's something that could have been done like that and not involve so much pain and suffering all up and down the line. And believe me, there was a few pains and sufferings there. So I stepped down from DOT about 4, 5, 6 months ago and joined Automation Anywhere. And I know we're first up to talk a little bit about this company and what our technology brings to bear for the federal sector. Based on which analyst you talk to, Automation Anywhere is the number one, number two RPA company out there. We have the most number of bots in deployment worldwide. Mostly that's with commercial enterprises. We have, you can do the math, with 3,100 customers. We have a lot of very significant users of bots. We have several customers in the thousands and multi-thousands of bots territory, so they've been doing it for a while. The company was founded in 2003, based in Silicon Valley, California, and we have set up fairly recently an office in the DC area, in Reston specifically, to really focus on the federal and public sector enterprise. We're in a major growth phase. We have a little over 2,000 people. A year ago, it was probably half that, and we were last year receivers of the largest Series A venture capital fund in Silicon Valley history. So we're certainly on a high growth trajectory. Recently, earlier this month actually, we announced a new version of our product, which is web-based, cloud-native, RPA as a service. And this really gives the customer the choice of deploying the RPA system in the cloud, public, private, or hybrid, or using it on premises, as our previous versions have been. So it's really geared to be as flexible as possible based on the customer needs, and obviously that's huge for government. On the far left, we talk about the experience. This is, we see this as vital for some of our large-scale commercial customers. To scale up, you need to make it really easy for the business user to develop their own simple bots. And we're going to see a demonstration by John in a minute or two of how easy it is. Basically, a business user without IT development know-how can be able to use drag and drop and universal recording technology to basically build their own simple bots, which is how you really scale up. Some of our more mature, sophisticated customers actually have bot building training built into their onboarding platforms so that it's in the culture. So when their people start saying, that's kind of a rote, redundant, routine, automatable task, they'll know what to do. And for the simple cases, they can do it themselves. And that is how you scale up quickly. Also for the developer, depending on whatever programming language of choice you have, the system is built to adapt to all that seamlessly, using, again, drag and drop, and John may show a little bit about that. The second pillar is the cloud, and those who have worked with the cloud for other systems know that this is a great way to reduce your infrastructure needs, which helps lower total cost of ownership. It also helps with security and governance. Governance, well, security is probably number one in government, but governance is also, for any of those of you in the CIO world, you understand how challenging it is. I heard DoD talk earlier about, well, we had to ask people voluntarily how many bots they were using. If you have a governance model that can actually see which bots are in use, which ones have been built and kind of mothballed, you can actually make sure you're not repeating yourself and wasting time building the same bot that's already been pre-built. To that end, we have a bot store that can actually be modified for the particular agency using it or a particular government entity using it to make sure that if one person has built a bot that's usable elsewhere, They just have to search for it and download it immediately for using without starting from scratch. These are the types of things that help with department-wide deployments. And as you're starting this process, and believe me, the federal government's all in a starting mode. I think DoD listed 140 bots either in production or development or testing. The true number of total bots for DoD, it's going to be a lot more than that. I mean, some of the commercial customers, we have like several thousand. I think Amazon's got 30,000. You can see as you start getting digital as an enterprise, you're going to be needing these in every corner of your department. So governance is going to be very, very important, more so even than now. Security, we've built in extra security. A lot of our customers are banks where they're moving money around using our technology, and it's highly secure. They trust it. It's been banged on quite a bit. The third pillar, we think this is really key as you kind of look on a department-wide or government-wide effort. You need options. You need flexibility. You need attended bots plus unattended bots plus complex cognitive AI-enabled bots. You're going to need something, a little of something or everything as you proliferate. And this has been built into our system, so we think it's very well made for government use on a large scale. Analytics built in, we heard earlier this morning how important that is to see which ones are in use and to identify bottlenecks or identify areas of process improvements. Very key. You don't need to automate inefficient systems, steps you don't need. And then on the ecosystem, heard several times about it was challenging because they upgraded Microsoft Outlook and we had to reprogram our bots, or there was an upgrade and it didn't quite align with the bots we had programmed. In the cloud, it addresses a lot of that, and so it's much more aligned with, say, emerging technologies as they come to bear. It's much easier to plug in to an on-cloud native RPA platform. The same with the AI plugins. A lot of companies and some government are using some of those AI plugins on their RPA to do more automations than basic RPA can accomplish. Next steps, we definitely encourage you to watch this demo and see how easy it can be for a non-technical business user to build bots and scale up very quickly. But we encourage you to invite us or come out to us. We can be as flexible as you need us to be. We'll come to your department and set up a bot camp. This happened about a year ago. We had a session in the Intel community, and somebody from the back of the room said, "You should put us through a bot camp." And we said, "Okay, we can do that." And we can train up to 20 users at a time. Like I said, in your space, all we need is internet connectivity, and show you basically how to build a bot. There's not necessarily a lot to it. You can build very complex ones, but in a few-hour session, you'll probably just be getting your feet wet. We will show how federal use cases, where some federal agencies are today, or they're pushing forward in. Really look at the bot creation to the deployment. How do you keep it updated? How do you make sure it's being used the way it was intended? And really, this is the bottom line. Everybody's in government more or less because they care passionately about the mission. If you can reduce your time spent on the redundant, the rote, the routine, and actually use more time on analysis and delivering the mission, you're going to be a happier government employee base. And we've seen that on the commercial side, and we expect to see that on the government side, and it's even more powerful because people generally join government because they love the mission. We will show AI-powered bot building sessions, and we'll talk about scaling. We'll talk about, okay, if you start out with a pilot, that's great, but if you don't have the end in mind and say, how am I going to get to all of my corners of my department to really deliver those benefits on a large scale, you have a risk of running stalled. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, and he's going to walk us through a short demo. And thank you very much. We'll be available for questions.
Okay, thank you, and thank everyone for coming. And give me 1 second here. So I'm going to show you a couple of different interfaces, and there's a reason I'm showing you two of them. Both of these are, as Keith said, we have a cloud-based version. And what I'm talking about, two different versions, is I'm going to log in once as the administrator to show you how the administration is done, and then as a user to show you how to build a bot. And of course, both of them have timed out, so give me 1 second to log back in. Oh, this is good. Go back into it. Apologize here, it timed out, and I forgot the password, so I had to have it automatically done. So the first thing to talk about is our control room, and the reason it's important is, as Keith was saying, we have customers such as Amazon that have tens of thousands of bots. If you have that many bots running, you have to be able to govern what they're doing. You have to have security around who can do what, and you have to be able to have operational analytics to see what's happening. And that's what I'm showing you on this. You know, notice some of these graphs. This is kind of the SE, the sales engineer playpen. So this is where we all build our demonstrations. And so you can see we have about 950 users on it. And we need to make sure that when I'm giving this demonstration, somebody else doesn't wonder what happens if they click this button and bring the system down. So using the tool, we can specify exactly who's allowed to do what. And also with the operational analytics, we can check out information as to what's happening with the system. How many bots have run? Are any bots scheduled? What's our bot velocity? And we don't look at it just as a particular tick in time. We can go back and look at historical data because we're pulling all this data from our audit logs. So every action that's taken by any user who's either running a bot, whether they're running it attended or unattended, or creating a bot, all of their actions are audited for us to keep track of. We can also see what's happening, as I said, with the various bots. So we have all the failure reasons, and again, as I was saying, this is the engineer's version, so people come on this system to do tests, and we can determine all the errors, or why aren't bots running, or are bots starting to fail more often. Maybe we should check and see if the system that they're connecting to is up. In addition to managing the bots, it's also important to be able to specify where they can run. So you can actually put devices, those either being PCs or virtual machines for unattended bots, and have those all defined in the system and say which devices are able to run which bots. And then using those, we can tell what's happening with each. And we can also drill down and get more details or get a trend chart. So my point of showing you all these things is that we do keep track of everything on your system automatically. And no matter how many users you have, we'll support that. Now, as I said, and as Keith mentioned, this is running completely in the cloud. This can be our cloud as a software as a service system, in your on-prem cloud. And I actually, for most demonstrations, I don't know if I'm going to have internet access. I actually install the whole thing on my PC so I can run it if I don't have internet. And a little bit more about auditing. This is just showing you that it's keeping track of every single thing somebody does. So when this comes up, you'll see it's how many people have logged on, how many times did somebody create a user. So it's not just your bots, but it's managing everything that happens to them. And speaking of that, we can look at all of the bots that have been uploaded. Now, depending on who you are when you log in, you can see your bots or all of the bots. I'm logging in as the administrator. We also have a Credential Vault that we support. So a lot of customers use CyberArk, and we fully interface with that to store credentials so that they don't have to be stored in a bot. For those customers who don't have something like CyberArk, we offer our own Credential Vault. And what that means is if you want me to build a bot for you, you don't want to tell me what your ID and password is for the system you want me to log into. You can put that in as a credential in CyberArk, and I just point to something called the user ID and the password. And I can't look at what either of those are, and neither can an administrator. Now, we also, when you start to get like some companies that have tens of thousands of bots, you want to manage carefully how they're run. So we do support work queues and workload tools so you can specify, for instance, which bots are most important. So when they come in, run them before anybody else, and you can have them put into queues, meaning the more important ones, when it comes in, as soon as an unattended bot runner becomes available, run the application on that. We do offer a bot store, and what we do is we have customers and some employees that may take a common process that they think a lot of other people would use, and we'll build a little bit of code around it. And it's sometimes that's a fully functioning robot that works. Sometimes it's just saving you a few commands when you want to say for one that I used a while back was it just does a simple date math. Easy enough to do in the product, but it still takes a number of commands to do something more complicated. But what it does, I pulled from the bot store, and you can add or subtract a number to any date, and it'll tell you what that date was. Just makes things a little bit easier. And then, of course, we can administer everything that's happening on your system. So you can create users. You can have the system create the users by everyone who's already defined in Active Directory. And most importantly, you can use the rules that we give you and also create your own roles. So we're very fine-grained as to who can do what. As I said earlier, you can specify who can run what bot on what machine. You can get very specific as to who's allowed to see what. And it's also very important when you start having customers with 30,000 bots. So let me go to another thing. I'm going to show you a couple of videos of building a bot, and I'm going to show you two things. The first one is I did video it, doing it live. I'm creating a simple bot, and it's using our recorder. So you'll see that, you'll see it saved, and you'll see it run. And then the next thing I'm going to show you is that same bot after I added some things to what the recorder did, and then we can go in and look at it afterwards, and then we'll take any questions as to how the tool works. So this is going out to the System for Award Management, and actually I'll tell you the story I was going to tell you after I show you building the bot, but this is me running the tool, again, all web-based, no code on my PC, to build a bot. Now, as you'll see in a little bit, there are a couple of different ways to show what the bot looks like, but I'm going to go ahead and quickly create it, and what I'm doing is I started up kind of it looked like a video camera. This is just going to record everything that I'm doing on the screen. Anything I click, it's going to put what command would normally be used to do that. So the first thing that happens when I run that command is it asks me, well, where do you want to go? What window or what application do you want to record? And this is showing. I want to click Search Records. I want to type in a DUNS number. And this is what a person would normally do when they went in here, and that's all I'm doing. It's recording me typing in. So you notice I'm typing real slow as I'm recording this. When it runs, it's almost instant how fast it types it in. So I'm done building it, so I'm going to hit Save, and this is showing Automation Anywhere. And by the way, if you're not familiar with SAM, for the most part, there are two responses you get when you put a DUNS number in. It's going to give you, that one a little too fast, it's going to give you the name of the company and whether it is an entity that would be available to give an award to or whether it should be excluded. So this is what the bot looked like after I went in and changed the commands a little bit to run it, to run more fully. And what I essentially did is I have the recording, but instead of having it put that one specific number in, I'm going to have it go out to a spreadsheet, go through all the numbers in the spreadsheet, and in a loop, keep going back into SAM and getting information that was requested for those users. Then I'm going to put the output in a spreadsheet. And I was working with a partner who's developing this similar application live for one of our DoD customers. And that will be live with them within a couple of weeks. And theirs is a little bit bigger than this because it's doing a little bit more. But let's go ahead and see what happens if I change it around. And we'll go in and look at this afterwards live to see what it looks like. But if we run this bot with additional things in it, yep, that's running the same one. So this is showing what the changed one looks like. I'm running this, and by the way, these things again, the customer who's going to be running this in a bit is running this all unattended. They don't want to watch the thing running on their PC. It's being run by a virtual machine. But now you're going to see it goes into SAM, and it's going to start putting a bunch of different numbers in. It's pulling all of those numbers out of a spreadsheet. The customer who's going to be doing this is having their bot triggered whenever they get an email sent in with a list of DUNS numbers in the subject line, but the bot essentially runs the same. So this will go through about 12 of them, and see how much faster this is than typing it in, which is why you're all here to hear about robot RPA. We'll give this a second to go in, and did find one exclusion. And what this one's doing is a little bit more than the first one. In addition, it's getting the company name, and it's copying off the green or the purple value, which says it's an exclusion or it is an entity. Now, also, in addition, when I was talking about the control room being run as the administrator, we also want to have analytics for your applications. This is showing the output. It's going to take a second. There's the output from the bot that just ran, which is going to be the spreadsheet with the results. So we can see that, and then I open it actually in Excel. And the last thing I'm going to show you is a dashboard that's giving me some statistics I might want to keep track of for the bot itself. Now in this, I just made it pretty simple, but you can make this as complex as you want. My default dashboard type is a donut chart, but you can make that anything you want. So it can be a bar chart, a histogram, anything like that. So let me get out of those. And then look at the bot. So now I'm logged in as a bot creator, and this is showing me what all the bots look like. And the video of the last one that we ran is called sample. And this essentially is what it looks like. And with the bot building tool, we have about 600 commands. That includes things that are in the drop-down that you have access to build your bot. Now keep in mind, when I say 600, these aren't complex applications. So for instance, there's a file create command. All I have to do is put in the name of the file that I want to create. So it's not a complex thing. There's no coding that's there. But using these 600 commands, you can create an application or a robot that will connect to that will do anything that you could do by typing in on your PC. And I've worked on a number of proofs of concept with customers. Almost every time there's at least one application that I've never used in my life, but as long as they tell me how that application works, how they access it from their PC, we can build a bot to do that. And one other nice thing about this, since it's all web-based, is starting in the beginning of next year, we're going to be able to run bots on Linux machines. And we can actually use this, again, since it's a thin client, I can create these bots on my MacBook. And then they run, right now they just run on Windows systems, but again, beginning of next year, we can also have the bots running on Linux systems to make it even, give you more things that you can do. Another thing you can notice along the side are what are all these things with people's names in it. So with the web-based version, we now allow customers to create packages. And what that means is they can create a new command that you can put in. Now, these are some ones that, this again is our SC demo system, so I don't know that any of these are complex or somebody is just practicing how to create the packages. But as soon as they do that, remember, I don't have anything on my PC. Once a person does that, all X hundred people who have access to this website have that new command available to them. And to create when we're creating a bot, all we do is drag and drop. So if I want to put this Boolean thing over here, I just copy over the assign command, and I fill in whatever information I want here. What these things are is there are different ways to view your bot. So this is basically showing me kind of a Visio diagram of what a bot looks like. This is a list view, so this shows kind of just the commands. They are both the same thing. You don't create it in one and have to recreate it in the other. It's just displaying it two different ways, and it depends on how you like to see it that you change that. In fact, if you can't decide, we have a dual version, so it shows both. Some of the things you can also do when creating this to make it a little bit easier to read. This is a pretty small bot. I've worked on some in the past that were pretty complex, and they were 200 or 300 lines long. They weren't that hard to make, took a little bit of time, but the thing is afterwards it's a little bit more difficult to remember where you did something with that many commands. So what we let people do is to put something in called a step, so you can shrink everything in a step together. So say in your bot you have 10 commands doing something with an Excel spreadsheet. You can put one box around all 12 of them that just says doing Excel work. That way it makes it easy if somebody else wants to go back to your bot. Wonder where that bot did something with Excel. So we're dragging and dropping, moving things over, very simple to create bots. And with that, Keith and I will take your questions. What most people do is put comments in, so you can put comments any place you want.
Which federal agencies are you working with?
Go ahead.
FDA is one of our customers. We just started working with the U.S. Army. We're also with the U.S. courts and other HHS entities, the Securities Exchange Commission. We're still pretty early in our path in the federal government, but we have a lot of discussions going on, and we really think this platform is well engineered for really department-wide use. So very hopeful to talk to many of you today, if make sure we're considered in your evaluation process.
Hi. You had mentioned your integration with CyberArk, and I was wondering if you were looking at any additional integrations with other identity access management systems.
Yeah, you can actually use our tool to integrate with anything you want to, but we are partners with CyberArk, so we have a little bit more information, but you can use those 600 commands to pretty easily integrate with any other tool. The one that we mention and that we publish information about and we co-wrote how best to use it with CyberArk. So you can, out of the box. I might have to go look on the bot store that I talked about, and somebody may have built an interface to one of the other ones.
Can an employee build this, or can an employee maintain it? And it's me sitting in the office.
Yeah, it's both. You can, so it depends what they want to do. So an employee can create them. Usually what we recommend doing when a company goes production is that they start up a center of excellence, because you do want to have some governance. Make sure that people aren't doing things that they're not supposed to do, or pulling information out that they have access to and giving it out.
And also,
so you can manage all that.
Just to add to that, I would say that's the secret sauce to really scaling up, to make it easy enough for the employee who knows what her bottlenecks and what her redundant processes are, to be able to build her own bot at her workstation and develop it. We see a lot of commercial customers taking off big time with that kind of system.
And just use the SAM example, which I think every single agency looks something up in SAM. Is that going to be in the store, and we would just be able to grab that, and then we would use a similar, okay, thank you.
When I nodded, I meant I understood. So that is something that could be put in a bot store. We could do that if you wanted it to look like this. And by the way, things in the bot store, it would just be this code, so you could go in and change it around to work the way you want to, or something like this, or the one that I'm working with the partner on, was pretty easy to make.
Yeah, you were talking about the bot store and how it can enhance reuse of the bots, and I'm guessing you could also use it to reuse chunks of functionality within the bot, so blocks within. Yeah, so if you do reuse, and say you took one of those pieces of functionality and you propagated it across 20 other bots, is there a mechanism in place that would automatically, if you made a change, apply that, or do you have to go apply the change to each of the 20 bots?
If you're making a call to that, it's called a metabot, you would put the new version of the metabot down on your system, and then that would automatically be
That would
used.
automatically
Yeah.
propagate out, so that greatly facilitates software.
Right. Now, if the new version had a different, an additional parameter for you to use, the bot that you have isn't going to know that, so
Right.
that you would go in, but if it fixes something, that just works.
Yeah, it's powerful. Thank you.
By the way, you can go out and look at what's on it, just botstore.automationanywhere.com to get an idea of what's there, and it'll show you what third-party software, if it is, it's going against, and who made it, whether it's an Automation Anywhere employee or a third party. Anything else? Okay, thank you for coming. Thank you.